The ship Aurora drifted through the dark sea of space, its silver hull reflecting faint glimmers of distant starlight. The silence outside was endless, but inside the vessel there was always the faint hum of engines, the rhythm of circulation fans, and the occasional soft chime from the bridge. For Captain Elias Rohn, those sounds had long become the music of duty. He had been in space for 15 years, and he thought he had seen everything the stars could offer. He was wrong. It began on a quiet shift. The crew was tired but alert. Most were junior officers, scientists and engineers sent on a long-range mission to map uncharted systems at the edge of human-colonized space. It was supposed to be routine. They would chart star positions, collect samples, and maybe discover a new asteroid belt or habitable planet. Nothing had suggested danger or wonder. Then the signal appeared. The navigator, a sharp young woman named Lyra, noticed it first. Her hands moved quickly over her console, brow furrowed. "Captain, I'm picking up something," she said. Her voice was uncertain, almost hesitant, which was unusual for her. Elias turned in his command chair, studying her screen. The display showed a ripple, not quite energy, not quite matter. It was as if the vacuum of space itself had shivered. He leaned forward. "Could it be a pulsar echo?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "No, sir. It doesn't match. It's layered. Almost like a voice, but stretched and distorted." The science officer, Dr. Marin, moved closer. "A voice? In deep space? That's impossible unless—" He stopped himself, not daring to say the word. Elias felt the same hesitation. Intelligent signal. It was the kind of discovery that could rewrite history. The ripple pulsed again. This time, every sensor on the ship went wild. Lights flickered, and the air seemed to vibrate with a pressure none of them could explain. Crew members shifted uneasily, their voices murmuring across the bridge. "Captain," Marin said slowly, "whatever it is, it's not natural, and it's not coming from any device we understand. The source is dead ahead." Elias gave a steady nod. His heart was beating, faster, but his face remained calm. "Bring us closer, slow approach, shields up." The Aurora glided forward. The stars ahead blurred slightly as though something invisible was bending them. Then it appeared. At first it was only a shimmer. Then, like curtains of light unfurling, a form emerged. It was not a ship. It was not a creature. It was something, between both and yet neither. A shape of luminous strands floated in the dark, pulsing gently with colors no human eye had ever named. Its edges were vague, shifting like smoke, but its presence was undeniable. It was alive. The crew fell silent. Every human instinct screamed both awe and fear. Then the whisper came, not through speakers, not through sound, but directly into their minds. Soft, like a breeze brushing the soul. Elias heard it first, but when his eyes darted across the bridge, he knew the others had felt it too. "Would you like to bond with me, human?" The words were clear. They were personal. And though the whisper echoed through the crew's thoughts, Elias knew somehow it had been directed at him. For a moment he couldn't breathe. He had spoken to diplomats, negotiated with miners, even given speeches before planetary councils, but no voice had ever touched him like this. It was not only sound, it was emotion, warmth, curiosity, and something deeper he could not name. Marin broke the silence with a nervous laugh that sounded too loud. It spoke, didn't it? Did everyone hear that?" "Yes," Lyra whispered, eyes wide. The communications officer stammered, "Captain, this isn't possible. We're picking up no signal, no frequency. It's—" He cut off, shaking. His head. "I don't know what it is." Elias forced himself to stand. His legs felt heavy, as if gravity had doubled. He looked out through the forward viewport at the being of light. He felt more than saw its gaze fixed on him. "This is Captain Elias Rohn of the human vessel Aurora," he said, his voice steady though his chest trembled. "We hear you. Who are you?" The reply was not delayed. The whisper came again. softer, almost intimate. Sealith. I am Sealith. The crew shifted uneasily. The alien had a name. That fact alone meant more than most of them could grasp. Elias asked, "What do you mean by bond?" The lights within Sealith pulsed brighter. For a moment the crew saw shapes, images, fragments, half-formed visions that danced across their minds. A sensation of unity, of two minds touching, thoughts flowing together without walls. Then the image faded, leaving behind a feeling of absence, like waking from a vivid dream. Bonding is union, Sealith whispered. Shared sight, shared thought, a step beyond loneliness. I ask you, human, will you walk with me? The bridge was filled with the sound of hearts beating too fast, the subtle intake of breath, the nervous shifting of boots. Everyone stared at Elias. He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. His mind spun with questions. Why him? Why humans? Why now? What would bonding mean? He was a captain, sworn to protect his crew, sworn to caution. Yet deep in his chest, something stirred, an instinct he could not silence. Dr. Marin moved quickly to his side, voice low but urgent. Captain, this could be dangerous. We don't know what it is. It could be hostile. A trick. If you agree, it might take control. Lyra added, or it could be the most important discovery in human history. We can't just ignore this. Elias lifted a hand to quiet them. His eyes remained locked on Sealith. The being of light pulsed gently, waiting, patient. He remembered his childhood, standing beneath the night sky on Earth. He remembered staring up at the stars and wondering if anyone out there was looking back. Now someone was. Not a conqueror, not a monster, but a voice that whispered like a friend. Still, he could not answer too quickly. He needed to understand more. Sealith, he said, why me? Why humans? The reply was slower this time, thoughtful. Because you are unfinished. Because you fight against the silence, we are fading and yet you rise. In you, I see possibility. The words sank into him like a tide. His crew whispered among themselves, but their voices faded as his focus narrowed on the alien presence before him. He had always believed humans were small in the scale of the universe, fragile sparks in an endless dark. But Sealith's voice carried no mockery, no superiority. It carried hope. Elias swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. He had to decide. The weight of his choice pressed on him like the gravity of a star. I need time, he said finally, his voice calm, but firm. This is not a decision I can make in an instant. Sealith's light dimmed slightly, then brightened again like a slow heartbeat. Time is yours, Elias Roan. I will wait. But know this. Opportunity fades, as all things do. The bond cannot remain unasked forever. The whisper faded, but her presence lingered like a gentle warmth on the edge of thought. The crew exhaled as one, as though they had been holding their breath the entire time. The bridge filled with murmurs, fear and wonder tangled together. Elias sat down heavily in his chair. His hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. He had faced pirates, storms, and bureaucrats. He had never faced this. Out there, waiting in the dark, was a being who had asked, not demanded, not threatened, but asked, "Would you like to bond with me, human?" And for the first time in his long years among the stars, Elias Roan felt that humanity was no longer alone. The Aurora drifted in orbit around a small, unremarkable star system, but the calm of space felt heavier now. The crew moved with a mix of tension and curiosity. Every glance toward the viewport betrayed their wonder. They could still see the shimmer of Sealith's light beyond the reach of their sensors, always present, always watching. Captain Elias Roan sat in his chair, elbows on his knees, trying to gather his thoughts. He could still feel her presence in the corners of his mind, gentle and probing. Her whisper had not left him. It had settled there like a quiet pulse. The memory of her voice made him aware of his own thoughts in a new way, as if they were being examined by an unseen mirror. "Captain," Lyra said softly, approaching him. I don't think it's gone. I can feel it too, just barely, like the tail of a dream. Elias nodded. Yes, it's still there, just beyond the edge of perception. Not threatening, but insistent. I need to understand what it wants and what it means. Marin stepped closer, carrying a tablet that glowed softly in the dim light of the bridge. I've been analyzing the energy signatures, Captain. There's nothing in any database that matches it. No radiation, no particle patterns. It's different. Alive, but not alive in the way we understand. And it's interacting with our minds. Elias leaned back, fingers tapping against the armrest. That is extraordinary, but dangerous. We can't predict what will happen if the bond is formed. It could be beneficial, yes, but it could also destroy one or more of us. And yet, Lyra said, almost under her breath, he wants to bond with you. Only you. And he said humans. Because we fight against silence. I think it chose you, Captain, not randomly. Elias frowned, considering. The weight of the choice pressed down on him. He had always believed that humans were fragile sparks in a vast darkness, that the universe was too immense for any one life form to matter. But Selith's presence suggested something else entirely, that humanity might carry a light of its own, small but persistent, capable of changing the course of events if nurtured. He took a deep breath and stood. I will not make a rash decision. But we will not retreat either. Lyra, chart a course closer. Marin, continue your scans. I want every piece of information we can gather before we do anything else. The crew obeyed, moving quickly but carefully. The ship edged forward into the system, sensors straining to detect Selith. But no readings came. The being of light existed outside instruments, or perhaps beyond the way humans measured reality itself. Hours passed. The crew fell into a rhythm of cautious observation. Still, the whisper returned, faint now, like a brush of air on the back of the mind. Elias heard it once more while sitting alone in his quarters. I am here. I wait. There is no rush, but time, even for me, is not endless. He closed his eyes and reached out, not with hands, but with thought, as if trying to touch her across the void. The sensation was electric and soothing at the same time. He glimpsed fleeting images, stars forming and dying, alien landscapes shimmering with light, and a vision of humanity reaching across the void with curiosity, determination, and defiance. Elias staggered slightly, breathing shallow, overwhelmed by the intensity. When he opened his eyes, the light outside the viewport pulsed gently in response, almost as if acknowledging his attempt. The next day, the crew gathered for a meeting. Tension was thick in the air, a mix of excitement, fear, and wonder. Marin, who had always been rational and grounded, spoke first. We can't ignore the risks. If this bond is harmful or even just incompatible, it could destroy Captain Roan. Or worse, it could affect all of us if it spreads unintentionally. We need a plan. Lyra nodded. Agreed, but there's also opportunity. If this bond works as he says, the knowledge, the insight, it could advance humanity more in 10 years than we've achieved in a century. Elias listened quietly. He understood both points. The universe was vast and dangerous, and humans were fragile. Yet the chance to connect with Selith offered something rare, a possibility that humans could rise, not just survive, but become more than they were before. He finally spoke, calm but firm. We proceed cautiously. We gather data, we prepare for contingencies, and we remain vigilant. But we do not close ourselves off. If Selith wishes to communicate further, we will listen. As the crew nodded, the light outside pulsed more brightly, almost in agreement. That night, Elias remained awake in the observation deck, staring into the void where Selith shimmered. The whisper came again, this time more insistent but gentle. You are not afraid. That is good. Humans fear much, yet continue. That is rare. That is why I reached you. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. He realized that fear was natural, but it could not dominate him. Curiosity, courage, and the desire to understand were equally human. "Selith," he said quietly, "what happens if I say yes? What does bonding truly mean?" The reply was slow, deliberate, and full of care. "It is sharing. Thoughts, senses, emotions. It is seeing the universe through each other's eyes. It is knowing what the other feels without needing words. For some it brings enlightenment, for others fear. It cannot be undone easily. You must choose willingly, and your heart must be open." Elias thought about the choice. He had faced battles, storms, and political intrigue. But this decision was unlike any he had made. It was not about victory or survival. It was about trust, about connection, about the possibility of becoming something greater. He turned to the crew the next morning. "I am considering it," he said simply. "But I want to understand everything. Before I make the bond, we will continue our study and communicate carefully. No hasty actions." Selith's light responded with a gentle pulsing, as if acknowledging the decision to take time. Days turned into a week. The Aurora remained in orbit, careful not to provoke Selith but close enough to maintain connection. The crew's data grew. Sensor readings, while unable to detect her fully, recorded subtle gravitational fluctuations, temperature shifts, and patterns in the surrounding radiation that hinted at Selith's presence. Elias noticed changes in himself. His thoughts felt sharper, yet more patient. He began sensing subtle cues from his crew, the faint unease in Lyra, the curiosity behind Marin's careful questions. It was not full perception, but a faint awareness, as if Selith's presence was training him to observe more deeply, to understand more fully. One evening, as the twin suns of the system dipped below the horizon of a distant planet, Elias walked the observation deck alone. He reached out mentally toward Selith, and this time, he felt her respond with warmth like sunlight through water. "You wonder about the cost," she whispered. "Fear not. The bond does not destroy. It reveals. But it requires courage, openness, and respect. You will not be alone, but you must choose freely." Elias exhaled, letting the tension drain. For the first time since the encounter, he felt calm. The path forward was uncertain, yes, but it was also full of possibility. Humanity had always reached beyond its limits, and now, perhaps, it had the chance to do so in a way no one had imagined. The crew watched him quietly, sensing the change. Even without knowing the full details, they could feel that something extraordinary was happening. There was tension, yes, and fear, but there was also hope. Hope that humans, fragile though they might be, could rise to meet challenges far beyond their ordinary grasp. The days passed slowly, filled with study, observation, and careful experimentation. Every time Elias reached out, every time Selith whispered, he felt both the vastness of space and the intimacy of connection. He realized that the choice to bond was not about power or control. It was about partnership, about sharing understanding and vision across the divide between species. Finally, after many cycles of waiting and studying, Elias stood before the viewport once more, gazing at Selith's form. The shimmer of her light seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, and for the first time, he felt ready. He did not yet speak the words of acceptance, but he understood what they would mean. "Lawyer," whisper came again, gentle but clear. "I wait. I will not force. But the universe moves swiftly. When you are ready, Elias Rohn, you may step forward." He nodded silently, more to himself than to her. He could feel the path ahead, stretching vast and unknown, full of wonder and risk alike. And he knew, deep in his bones, that whatever choice he made, humanity would never be the same again. The first step toward the bond had not yet been taken, but the journey had begun. And in the quiet of the observation deck, with stars stretching endlessly around him, Elias Rohn understood that the universe had reached out, and for the first time, humanity had the chance to reach back. The days that followed were filled with quiet tension aboard the Aurora. The crew worked, studied and observed, but the presence of Seleth hung over them like a gentle, insistent wind. Captain Elias Rohn felt it keenly. Each whisper, each pulse, of light seemed to draw him closer to a decision that he knew would change everything. Yet he also felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. This was not just about him. It was about the entire human crew and perhaps the future of humanity itself. Seleth's voice continued to reach him, not constantly, but in moments of stillness. She did not command, did not demand. She only offered, patiently, as if knowing the struggle within him. You are ready to see, Elias Rohn. You are ready to feel, she whispered one morning. Elias stood at the observation deck, staring at the soft glow that shimmered outside the ship. It moved like liquid light, stretching and folding over itself in patterns that were both beautiful and alien. Show me, he whispered back. Let me understand. I need to see what it means. The light pulsed, then expanded, surrounding him in a way that was impossible for human eyes to fully perceive. He closed his eyes and suddenly, his mind was filled with sensations he could not describe. Stars burned brightly, then faded into darkness. He felt the flow of planets spinning in harmony and the gentle hum of energy moving through the void. Time seemed to bend and twist. Past, present, and future coexisted in a single, endless moment. It was overwhelming, yet beautiful. He understood why Seleth had reached for humans, because they had the courage to keep moving forward even in the face of uncertainty. Even when he felt dizzy and unsteady, there was clarity in the chaos. You feel the universe as I do, Seleth whispered. You see the connections, the threads that bind all things. You are not afraid to look, to understand. That is why I chose you. Elias opened his eyes, breathing heavily. His hands gripped the rail of the observation deck, knuckles white. It's incredible, he said, voice trembling. I've never felt anything like it, but why me? Why humans? The light shimmered softly. Because humans endure. You create meaning even when faced with nothing. You rise against impossibility. In you there is defiance, hope, and curiosity. These are rare traits in the universe. That is why I seek a bond with you. Elias felt a deep sense of responsibility. This was more than an invitation. It was a test, a choice that would shape the future. And yet, even as fear and doubt pressed against him, he felt the pull of something greater. The chance to experience connection on a level no human had ever known. The crew watched him closely, sensing the change in their captain. Lyra spoke softly. One day, Captain, you're different. I don't mean in a bad way. You seem aware of things we can't see. Is it the presence of the being outside? Elias nodded slowly. Yes. It's subtle at first, but I feel it everywhere. I can sense small shifts in the environment and even in you all. I can't explain it fully, but it's like seeing threads connecting everything together. Marin frowned, adjusting his glasses. Captain, this could be dangerous. Perception is one thing, but if the bond is incomplete or forced, it could overwhelm the mind. We have no data on what happens if a human attempts this. We could be walking into disaster. Elias considered his words carefully. I understand the risks. That is why we proceed cautiously. But we cannot ignore what we are offered either. There is knowledge here that could change humanity, and perhaps a connection that could teach us something about ourselves we could never learn alone. The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. Though some feared the unknown, there was also a spark of hope, a sense that they were part of something extraordinary, something beyond mere exploration or research. The next attempt at communication came one evening. Elias had retreated to the observation deck again, feeling the pull of Seleth's presence more strongly than ever. The light pulsed around the ship, and he reached out mentally in a gesture that was both cautious and willing. You wish to bond, yet hesitate, Seleth whispered. That is wise. You understand the weight of this choice. Many would leap without thought, but you consider consequences. That is human strength, Elias Rohn. That is why we can proceed. He nodded. Show me more. Let me understand fully what this bond will do. The light intensified and his mind opened to visions once again. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations across countless worlds. He felt the pulse of stars being born and dying, the slow turning of galaxies, and the delicate balance that held planets in orbit. He felt the emotions of beings across space, fear, hope, love, and loss all intertwined in a complex web. It was overwhelming, and yet there was clarity in it too. For the first time, Elias understood the scale of existence in a way that no human had ever truly comprehended. And within that vastness, he felt the uniqueness of humanity. Small, fragile, yet capable of remarkable courage and creativity. You see why humans are needed, Seelith whispered. We are fading. Our knowledge is vast, but our kind is declining. We sought you not to dominate, but to continue, to grow, to endure. We need the defiance, the spark, the resilience that is uniquely human. You are rare in the universe. Elias felt the weight of her words. He understood the responsibility of the choice before him. To bond with Selith would be to accept knowledge, connection, and perhaps even the burden of guiding a path for both species. But he also felt the excitement, the chance to rise beyond human limits, to experience understanding on a level that no one else could. Days passed in preparation. The crew monitored systems, logged data, and ensured that every precaution was taken. They were no longer just observers. They were participants in a moment that could change the course of human history. One night, as the aurora drifted through the dark void, Elias spoke aloud to Selith for the first time, without hesitation. I am ready, he said, voice steady. I wish to bond, to learn, to understand. Show me what it means. The light outside pulsed, expanding and contracting like a living heartbeat. He felt a warmth spreading through his mind, a gentle connection, reaching into the deepest parts of his consciousness. It was not intrusive, it was a partnership. Thoughts flowed between them like a quiet river, each aware of the other without words. He saw glimpses of Selith's experiences, memories of distant stars, civilizations he could barely comprehend, and a deep sense of empathy for all life. And in return, she experienced fragments of his own mind, the courage, curiosity, and humanity that had driven him across the stars. The bond was not instant. It was a process, gentle and deliberate. Elias felt his mind expanding, stretching, to accommodate new perceptions, new ways of understanding the universe. He felt Selith's thoughts brushing against his own, curious, cautious, and patient. The crew watched in awe as the light outside the ship shimmered and danced. They could not see the bond directly, but they felt its presence. The air on the ship seemed charged with energy, subtle vibrations that made the hairs on their arms stand on end. Marin whispered, Captain, it's working. I can feel it too. There's something different about the air, the energy. It's not just the ship. It's like the entire space around us has changed. Elias nodded, feeling the truth of the words. It is more than a connection. It is understanding, and it is just the beginning. As the bond deepened, Elias realized that his perception of time, space, and even himself had shifted. He could sense patterns and connections in the environment, anticipate small changes, and feel the emotional currents of those around him. It was subtle, yet profound, a new awareness that came with responsibility. Selith's whisper came again, softer now, like a gentle caress. You are ready, Elias Rohn. Not for power, not for control, but for understanding. Together we will see what can be achieved. Together we can endure. Elias smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had never known in the void of space. The bond was not a burden. It was a partnership, a shared journey that promised both wonder and challenge. He understood that the path ahead would not be easy, but it would be meaningful. And for the first time since he had stepped into the stars, he felt truly connected, not only to Seleth but to the infinite possibilities of the universe and to the enduring spirit of humanity. The weeks that followed the bond were unlike anything the crew of the Aurora had ever experienced. Captain Elias Roan's perception had expanded in ways that seemed almost impossible. He could sense the gentle rhythms of the ship, the subtle vibrations of distant stars, and even faint emotional currents flowing through the crew. Seleth's presence had become a constant, quiet companion in his mind, never intrusive, always patient, always guiding. Yet with the growth came challenges. Even the most careful observation could not eliminate uncertainty. Elias had begun to notice subtle strain on the crew. Some of them experienced fleeting headaches, a sense of fatigue that came without physical cause, as if the ship's new energy patterns brushed against their own nervous systems. Lyra, usually so steady, admitted one evening that she had trouble sleeping, her dreams filled with strange, radiant visions she could not explain. "We are part of something bigger now," Elias told her gently. "But it is natural to feel overwhelmed. Your mind is adjusting to the energy Seleth brings. You are not in danger, but awareness can be disorienting." She nodded, but the concern in her eyes remained. "I understand, Captain. I just did not expect it to feel so real." Elias turned to Marin, who had been monitoring the ship's systems obsessively. "And you, Doctor? How are the readings? Anything unusual in the instruments?" Marin shook his head, though his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tablet. "Nothing that threatens the ship directly, but the energy patterns around us. They are complex. They shift and flow as if alive. I can chart them, but not predict them. We are navigating uncharted territory on every level." Elias nodded. "Then we continue carefully. We observe. We learn. We do not rush and we do not panic. This is new, yes, but it is also an opportunity. Humanity has faced unknowns before, and we will face this one too." The bond deepened over the following cycles. Seleth began to share. More than visions, she shared understanding. Elias could feel the rhythm of her thoughts, the gentle flow of her memory, and the pattern of her experiences across time and space. He saw civilizations rise and fall, the slow decay of worlds, and the quiet endurance of beings who had learned to persist against impossible odds. But the universe was not always patient. The Aurora's sensors picked up an anomaly in a nearby system, a small human outpost reporting strange signals, transmissions garbled and filled with distortions. The outpost had been sending data about an uncharted sector when the signals abruptly stopped. Elias called the crew to the bridge. "We have a situation," he said. "The outpost is silent. We need to investigate, but carefully. Seleth, I sense your awareness can help guide us." The light pulsed softly and the whisper filled his mind. "The outpost faces danger. I can sense the disturbance. Move with caution. Be aware, but do not rush into fear." Elias nodded. "Set a course. We go slowly. Shields up, sensors ready. We will be prepared." The journey to the outpost was tense. The crew moved with precision, every action measured. When they arrived, the station appeared abandoned. Systems flickered and life signs were absent. Yet there were traces of energy, subtle shifts that hinted at interference. Not natural, not human. Marin frowned. Whatever happened here, it left a signature. Not destructive, but disruptive. It is unlike anything in our databases. Seleth's whisper reassured him. "It is a test of understanding. Observe without fear. Learn without haste. Do not let panic guide you." Elias led a careful inspection. They entered the outpost, moving slowly through darkened corridors. The air was stale, and dust settled on consoles. But the environment was stable. Yet there was a sense of presence, subtle and unyielding, like the awareness of a mind beyond comprehension. As Elias moved through the control room, he felt a faint echo in his own thoughts, a resonance of fear, confusion, and determination. He realized it came from the human minds that had once operated the station. Their experiences, emotions, and last actions were imprinted faintly in the residual energy of the facility. It was not consciousness as he knew it, but a memory, a ripple. Selith, he whispered. What happened here? An experiment, she replied. Another bond. Forced. The mind of the human could not endure. The result was instability. Observe this, Elias Rohn. This is why willingness and readiness are essential. The bond cannot be imposed. It must be chosen freely, with understanding. Elias studied the consoles carefully. The energy patterns corroborated her words. The other human had been overwhelmed, the connection forced without proper guidance. The result had been catastrophic, not in a violent explosion, but in a collapse of perception and control. He felt a shiver run through him. The choice he had made to bond willingly now seemed even more vital. Humanity could rise, but only with understanding and respect. The weight of responsibility pressed against him, and yet he felt a quiet strength. They could succeed where others had failed because the bond had been entered with courage and consent. The crew worked carefully to record data, stabilizing the outpost's systems. They restored basic functionality and transmitted a report back to human command. There was no one left to save, but the knowledge gained would prevent others from making the same mistakes. As they prepared to leave, Elias stood at the observation deck once more. Selith's light shimmered beside the ship, and he felt the comfort of her presence. You understand the danger, Elias Rohn, she whispered, but you also understand potential. Humanity can endure where others falter because you choose, because you learn, because you rise. He nodded, feeling the truth in her words. And we will not take this lightly. The bond is not a weapon, not a shortcut. It is a partnership. We will honor it. The journey back to the Aurora's previous course was quiet, reflective. The crew sensed the seriousness of the events at the outpost, yet there was a spark of hope. Humanity could rise, yes, but it required care, patience, and courage. Selith continued to guide Elias, helping him understand patterns in energy, time, and perception that humans had never encountered. With her insight, he could anticipate environmental shifts, understand subtle dangers, and see the threads connecting events across space. The knowledge was exhilarating, but also humbling. He realized the responsibility was immense. One evening, as the ship passed a dense asteroid field, an unexpected disturbance occurred. The sensors flared, showing shifts in gravity and radiation. Elias felt the disturbance before instruments registered it, a subtle tension in space itself. Selith's voice was calm, but urgent. Proceed carefully. The environment resists intrusion. You can navigate safely, but do not rush. He guided the ship with steady hands, feeling the currents of energy and pressure. The crew followed, trusting his perception even when instruments lagged behind. The Aurora passed safely, the asteroid field like a silent test of humanity's courage and awareness. Afterward, Elias reflected on the lessons of the outpost and the asteroid field. The universe was vast, beautiful, and dangerous. Humanity's strength was not in domination or force, but in awareness, courage, and choice. The bond with Selith amplified these qualities, but it also revealed the fragility of unprepared minds. He gathered the crew. We have learned something important, he said. We are part of something extraordinary. But extraordinary comes with responsibility. We will continue to learn, to observe, and to grow. We will rise, not recklessly, but wisely. Humanity must endure, and we must prove ourselves capable of partnership with Selith. The crew nodded, feeling the weight and importance of his words. They were no longer just explorers. They were witnesses and participants in a moment that could shape the future of their species. That night, Elias stood alone in the observation deck, gazing at Selith's light. The whispers were gentle, full of warmth and guidance. You have learned well, Elias Rohn, she said. You understand the weight, and you choose wisely. The path ahead is challenging, but it is not impossible. Together we will endure. Together humanity and I can rise beyond limits you have yet to imagine. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the pulse of the universe, the rhythm of Selith's presence, and the quiet strength within himself. The journey was far from over. Challenges, awaited, and unknown dangers lurked in the vast expanse of space. But he was ready. Humanity was ready. And in that moment, he knew that the bond was not only a connection, it was a promise. A promise that, with courage, understanding, and choice, humanity could rise to meet the universe itself. The aurora drifted onward, light shimmering around it like a gentle halo. The crew, though still human and fragile, had begun to glimpse the extraordinary. The path was uncertain, yes, but it was theirs to walk. And with Seleth by their side, they would face whatever lay ahead, together.